Well, we want to welcome everybody. We're going to start in a few minutes. You can keep talking amongst yourselves. Are we waiting for a particular? Oh, 1 minute. 11:45. 11:45. Come on in. Don't worry. Come on in. We got time. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming. We've had 3 of these. We did 2 Tuesday, and then last night, and then today. As I said this morning in worship, and as I said before, we will be transparent as able. We will be transparent with you, and if you have questions and if you have suggestions, I invite all of that. When I first got here last August, we did listening sessions in October and November and December. I think we had 12 different listening sessions. And every single one of the listening sessions were basically the same. And they gave the same information. And one of the major themes was a deep worry and concern for our congregation as it ages. I'm aging right now, I'm telling you. We were talking with Adam and Russ with our wives, and these guys are born in the 90s. I don't know how that happens, but it happens. I guess our kids were born in the 2000s, but we're aging, and so I took that and that feedback. I didn't do the listening sessions just to make you guys feel good that I listen to you. Actually, I care about what you have to say. But it is true. We're an aging congregation, but we're not alone. Most mainline denominations are aging, and part of that is because they have not been able to figure out how to change. And the people that are in those congregations have created barriers for change. We did a demographic study. If you were going to take a 10-minute drive to come to Prince of Peace, the demographic study, 10 minutes away from here on a drive, what do you think the average age is? Wrong. Millennials. The number one age group in 10 minutes away from here are millennials. They have moved into every single one of these apartment complexes that are being built up. They're here. They're present. And most of them drive by Prince of Peace and don't even know that we're here. The number one age are millennials. The second highest age group are Gen Zs. Now, most of those guys are in high school, right? I mean, there's a lot of students, but most of them are Gen Zs. The lowest number are people who are 70 plus. That's an actual scientific study. I'm not just making that up. I was blown away just like you because I figured. So there's a lot of excuses that a lot of churches use to talk about how and why they're aging and not bringing in younger generations. Do you know where these younger generations are going to church? Because they're going to church, but you know where they're going? Hosanna, River Valley, Eagle Brook. They're packed with younger people. Now, I don't have anything wrong with any of those organizations. They're working very, very hard, and they have their own deal going on, and they're making it happen. But I will tell you, and this is going on live stream, I do not agree with the theological approach to the world, especially around inclusivity and LGBTQ+. That's our message here, that everyone's welcome. Now, I have to tell you, that battle has been fought and is being fought in groups that are not my kids' age. My kids are 22 and 19. That battle's been, they don't even think about it. They're swimming in those waters. They have friends. They've watched classmates transition gender-wise. I mean, this is not new news for them. But for some of us, it becomes a little more difficult. That generation of people are present with us in community, but they're not coming to Prince of Peace. And we need to do something about it. I'm going to tell you a quick story from Scripture that helps us frame this a little bit. Jesus is at Capernaum. Jesus is at Capernaum, and people find out that Jesus is there, and they go to the house where Jesus is. They pack the house. Everybody wants to see Jesus because Jesus has been healing people. He's been connecting with people. He's been helping them point themselves to God in their own community and spiritual life. And the house is packed. Nobody can get in. And a group of friends, they have a friend who they want to bring to Jesus. They can't get in. They bring this friend on a mat. He's laying down. They can't get in. And they decide that getting this friend to Jesus is the most important thing they can do. So they jump on the roof and they dig a hole. They dig a hole in the roof, a big enough hole in the roof so they can fit a guy in a mat down with ropes to Jesus. Jesus heals and he forgives this person's sins, brings them back into community, which is what that means. And there's lots of really good stuff in that story. There's one character in that story that we don't hear from. And it's the most interesting character, I believe, in that whole story. It's the person that owns the house. Now, this house is not a house without a roof. It's just camping. Roof, right? I don't know why this keeps cutting in and out, but it's camping. It needs a roof to be a home. And this family has been spending decades maintaining this roof. They have to maintain it every single year. They have to repair it. They have to make sure that it doesn't have leaks. Sticks and grass and mud and all kinds of things are going on this roof. And this person is sitting right next to Jesus. And all of a sudden they hear somebody's on our roof. And all of a sudden stuff starts falling down on the people. Grass and dirt, mud, sticks start falling down. And they're digging a hole in my roof. And you know what the miracle in that story is? Is they said, do it. Because getting people to Jesus is more important than my roof. More important than my roof. Well, there's lots of churches in the world who are trying to maintain a roof, and there's no one in it. There's no one in that church, but they've got a good roof. And so what we're working on hard, very hard to do, is to find ways to knock a hole in the roof. And we're all needed. We're all needed. Many people in this room have been here for decades. You've maintained this roof. You've given to capital campaigns. You have given offering every single week, every year. You have given to maintain the roof. And yes, I'm asking you to continue to do that. And we've got to find ways to create access points for people to get to Jesus, and especially our younger people. And it's not what we've been doing. The definition of insanity: doing the same thing over again, expecting a different result. So yeah, there's some holes being dug, and there's some stuff falling on us. And we're gonna have to brush off some of that and get it out of our hair and move around like that. Some of it may not be as easy to deal with. Some of it may not be something that we enjoy, but we're working hard to get people to Jesus. That's the point. I'm 53 years old. My work life is probably what? 12 years, 15 years? I will not be here at Prince of Peace 20 years from now. Hopefully I'll be alive, but I won't be here. What legacy am I leaving? And I'm going to ask you the same thing. What legacy are you leaving? The question is, are you leaving a legacy of feed me, feed me, feed me? Do it the way I want to do it the only way I want to do it? Or are you leaving a legacy that said, we need to get people to Jesus? We need to get people to Jesus. And we're going to have to dig a couple holes in places that may be a little uncomfortable. What legacy are we leaving behind? My hope is that in 20 years, there are a ton of millennials sitting where you're sitting, and someone else is standing in front of them going, what legacy are you leaving, you 50-year-old weirdos? Because millennials are all weird. I'm just going to let you know that. I don't know what's going on with them. Gen Z, they have no idea what's going on with Gen Zs. Emily talked about YouTube went down, and the kids are like, no! Right? What legacy are we leaving? So we're going to try to do two things at once. We're going to try to walk and chew gum. I talked about this at the listening sessions, and I think we can do it. I think we can do it. Prince of Peace has a history of being innovative. We have a history of changing and doing things because it matters and it connects with people. We're going to try to thread the needle, and we're going to adjust as we need to adjust. It's one of these why we're having these meetings today. When we had our listening sessions, I brought out a book called Think Again. I don't know if you guys remember those listening sessions way back in October, November, December. But the whole idea is to not just simply assume that you have the right answer, is to test it over and over and over again and to see what happens and see what's changing. If what we're doing is not doing what we think it should be doing, we're going to rethink it. We're going to rethink it. And at the same time, we're going to be able to connect in with our people that are here. So you're going to see a couple different worship offerings that hopefully will hit every single person. Now, I said this on last night, and then I'll be done. Russ, you come just take the microphone for me. Our early service is going to be traditional leaning. It's not traditional. I'm not showing up with a robe. I know some of you would want me to do that, but I'm not showing up with the robe, and we're not having incense, and we're not doing the whole chanting thing. I did an interview with a church back before I took the job at Resurrection, and all they wanted to know from me was what setting I would use for a particular Sunday after Pentecost. And I said to them, I took that class. I was in that. Emily, you're going to be in those classes. I don't remember. And they looked at me and I looked at them. The interview was like 15 minutes. And I said, you're not looking for somebody like me. Now, I value highly the Apostles' Creed and saying that in community. I highly value confession and forgiveness, call to worship, those pieces. So we're leaning into our tradition, but we're not going to be fully on traditional. I know that word has been hard for people. We're stuck with language, right? We're stuck with the only language we have. Now, the amazing thing is that when I talk to people, that's not just the old person service. Emily, you'd go to that service. Adam would. Don't even tell me how old you are. There are actually a lot of young people that are looking for church as they think that it is as they grew up. More traditional leaning, more call response, prayers, those kinds of things. So it's not the old person service. We're not creating an old person service because many of our older people, one of the guys that's in the choir actually came up to me and he goes, man, you guys need to tear it up. Turn up the volume. I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin. Yeah, you did. You grew up listening to rock and roll. And somewhere we checked that at the door at church, right? But so we're going to be offering those kinds of pieces. One service is going to change time. That's going to be a little bit to get your head around. When I first started here in 1996, we had at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10:10, and 11:20. Remember those days? Yep. And then we went to what? 8, 9, no, it was 8:30, 9:45, and 11. So we've been through worship change, times change. Now here's a really cool thing that we get to do on a Sunday with an hour between the services. We get to actually offer time for people to gather and be in community. When we have the breakfasts, you have a line that extends beyond the door. So if you come out at the 9 o'clock service, you're standing in line at around 10:15, waiting to get breakfast, and people are trying to get in to service. It gives us more time. It actually also gives us a little bit more time to have discussion and to grow spiritually and to have small groups offered at that time. So it's not just a willy-nilly, there's purpose to all of this that's longer term. And we're trying to get you guys there with these meetings. Adam had a great visual. Us as leaders, we're here, and our congregation is here. And we're trying to get you here with us so that you can see what we're doing. There's purpose, there's plans, there's a reason why we're doing this. It's not just, hey, we just picked a time because that's what we Googled. We want to build community. And we're gonna use strategically the ministry things that we have, we're going to use the choir, brass, handbells. Russ is going to talk about this in a little bit, flutes, and use them in very strategic ways, not just because we have a choir, then the choir just we have a choir just sings. Well, there's a reason why we have a choir. Let's use that for that reason. One other last thing I'll talk about is performance. Do you know what is the most high form of performance at Prince of Peace in worship? Anybody want to guess? It's not Russ and the band. No, but when we're up on stage, what is the highest point of performance? If you said that's performance, the choir. The choir is the performer. Think about it. The choir sings. You don't ask them to sing along. The director actually turns their back to the congregation and directs the choir. So the thought that we have a band that's inviting people to sing is performance. No, the choir is our performer in many ways. And we're going to try to grow the choir. And we're going to invite people to sing as the choir sings, because we don't want performance. That's not what we're doing. Like I said before, we're not bringing out U2. I don't think you heard that. We're not bringing out U2, although that would be amazing because they're the best band ever. Gen Xer right here. So we're going to use all these elements. Then the last thing, I'm going to talk about Russ. I asked Russ to come here when I knew and became aware that some stuff was going on. I knew something was going to happen, and I reached out to Russ, and I reached out to him 4 times, and he said no 4 times. So if anybody thinks that I had a plan when I first got here to bring Russ in, there's a bunch of people at Resurrection that think that. I ran into somebody the other day from Resurrection, and they were like, your plan all along was to leave and then bring Russ with you. No, it wasn't. He said no 4 times. And one of the reasons why he said no 4 times is because his job, I think, is the hardest job at a church. Adam, now it's your job is the hardest now too. You can replace a pastor because you know what a pastor's going to do. You're going to give him a microphone, he's going to talk just like I'm doing, or she's going to talk just like what I'm doing right now. Too long. You know what a pastor's going to do. But with a change in worship leadership comes all kinds of changes. And it's not easy. When we got out of COVID at Resurrection, we made a very determined decision that we were going to change our worship in ways that was not only going to appeal to our older folks, but was also going to appeal to younger people. And it worked. It worked. One of the reasons why it worked, because that man over there has an enormous amount of integrity. And he sat down with our older community and said, things are going to be a little bit different. I want you along. Here, give me feedback. I want to hear it, even if it's bad, even if it's negative. We're getting a lot of surveys that come in. You know, I stopped reading them because I don't need to tell people that I can't preach. That's fine. I already know I can't. That's okay. And Russ talked to these folks and brought them along the process. When I left Resurrection, they were sad. Some of them were sad. Some of them were angry. But when Russ left, they were really, really sad. And you know who the people that were the saddest? Were the older folks that he spent time with, because they saw what he was trying to do and they wanted to be part of a legacy that they would leave behind, a church that was stronger than when they got there. We're talking about legacy here as well. What do we want Prince of Peace to look like 20 years from now? I don't want it to look like empty. I don't think that's what God's calling us to do. I don't want to be a part of that. I had somebody in the listening sessions last fall talk about, we don't want to go into hospice. My dad's in hospice right now. I've been with a lot of people that have been in hospice, but it's different when it's your own family. You know the end is coming, and we're not here yet at Prince of Peace. We're not done. We have a lot more work to do. So I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm energized. These are challenges and opportunities that are in front of us. And yeah, some stuff's going to fall on us as we dig holes in the roof. And so those of you who have been faithful members here for years and years, you've maintained the roof, you've given to the roof, you've done all this stuff. Actually, we actually do have to replace the roof because it's leaking everywhere. But I want to say thank you. And we're moving to aggressively to work and try to get connected to the next generation of people. So I'm going to stay here. Russ is going to speak, and then we're going to have, are you doing the microphone? Okay, she can do the microphone because it's good for MJ.
No, I got this one. I'll take this one. Thanks, Paul. Let's give it up for Paul, too, for introing us. What's going on? I'm going to try to be as quick as we can. The live stream goes till 12:30. It's 12:10. So before I speak, I'm actually going to have Adam get up and kind of talk a little bit about the 8:30 service and the choir and some of the changes he's excited about. All good things. By the way, New York trip is still on. Yep. A lot of excitement behind that. And I want to reiterate something that Paul is talking about. Although the choir has a performance element to it, we're all engaged in worship in different ways. That does not mean that we look at the choir any different than we look at the band. We are all a part of this service, giving our talents and our gifts in different ways. So I want to reiterate, thank you for being a part of that choir. Let's continue to grow the choir. Adam's very excited to be in here and to be growing the choir. And we're going to get all ages involved, which we're really excited about as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Change is terrifying, right? Change is terrifying. When I first started a week ago last Monday, people kind of talk about, your first day, your first week is like you're drinking from the fire hose a little bit. Now imagine you're stepping into a position where you're also in the midst of all this change. That was scary, right? When we talk about, just sneak right past you. When we talk about traditional services, we all have that idea in our head, right? I'm a northern Minnesota, North Dakota boy. Our pastors always wore the vestments. We did the call to worship. We always sung, right before we sang, liturgy all over the place, right? But what I see here more than anything is passion. And that passion for music and the passion for lifting up worship through music, right? I'm a traditional boy from, the day, right? My people's back here. There's a reason why my back is to the audience, because I'm scared of you sometimes, right? But that's not sustainable, is it? You look at the average age of not just this church choir, but any church choir that I've worked with and many church choirs that my colleagues work with, the average age isn't below 60, right? And so what do we do as a family, as a congregation, to invite people to participate in worship in the best way that we can? It's by making it inclusive. It's by saying, this is the way we've done it, but that doesn't mean it's the way it should always be. You know what I'm saying? So with this beautiful collaboration between myself, between Pastor, between Russ, between every single person involved in staff musically and beyond. That is our goal, right? When I first started on Monday, my vision of a traditional service on Monday was different than it was on Friday, right? And that, because of my ideas, but it's through talking with Russ, through Pastor, through Bruce, through Kyle. We don't want the contemporary parts of that service to be non-existent, right? We have our hymns, yes. We have our choirs, we have our brass, but we also have a small praise band in there as well, because there is a marriage and there is a beauty with inviting all types of music that appeals to every type of person. Not just the people who've been here for 50 years, but for the people who listen to pop on the radio, and that they can feel like they have a place in here, right? So I feel the fear, I feel the intrepidness with change, but when I tell you I've worked for a bunch of churches, I have never been more excited than I am right now to be a part of such great change, right? And that you all are going to be part of it. So I'm open to any questions, but I'm going to pass it back over to, he's going to run away. You want to tell a joke? No. Anyway, here's Russ.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Does everybody have a packet? One of these service chart packets? Do you need one? Need one? Okay. MJ is going to be walking around handing out some packets. She's also going to be taking some notes. Anything that we hear and talk about today, she'll make sure to record these, because the reason why we're doing this is to be as transparent as possible. We want to be open. This is a discussion. This is a talk. These comparison charts, this packet that you're getting is a living document. This is not set in stone. This is what we have created as a staff with the resources we currently have. So this is all we're thinking about, the future planning with what we have right now. Now, things can change based on our involvement and what's going on. So none of this is set in stone. This is just what our plan, what our map is currently right now. I want to talk about two things as we're getting involved in this. We're going to be talking about the music styles of the different services. And one of the big parts that we're going to talk about is volunteering. That's what's going to make these services flourish. That's what's going to make this church incredible and have a high impact in our community. It's finding those ways to get involved volunteering-wise, which is why in those packets you'll notice on the second page there is a volunteer form. It says worship service volunteer form, I believe. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get on down, talking about what's coming up ahead with these service changes. I want to start with the story. And is this mic all right? Can y'all hear? Okay, I want to make sure everybody hears. I don't want to talk too fast. Again, the stream is going to go till 12:30. After that, it'll cut off, so we'll have questions after it cuts off. I want to start with the story real quick. Are y'all familiar with the story of Abraham in the Bible? Some, yes. God comes to Abraham and he says, I'm going to give you descendants so many you can't count. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Look to the sky and look at the stars. Can you count them? Abraham says no. And God says, yeah, that's all of your descendants you're going to have. In our culture, if we're told that we're going to be given something, we want to go, when are we getting and what is it? You know, we ask those very intense questions because we want to have the facts. We want to know when we're getting that. Abraham does something interesting. He says, cool, I'm going to go plant a tamarisk tree. Are any of y'all familiar what a tamarisk tree is? It's an interesting tree in the desert. Now, when you go journey out in the desert, you'll notice that there's some bushes and stuff. It's enough to kind of cover your head. If you're really hot, you can lay down under that and have just some shade to cover your face. But a tamarisk tree is a huge tree in the desert that you could lay under, and it's actually going to be 10, 15 degrees cooler. So when you're walking that 120 degree weather in that desert, you lay under that tree, and it's, well, down to 100, but it's a lot cooler than being out directly in the sun. It's a massive tree. Now, the trick about a tamarisk tree is that it takes a lot of work and a lot of care. It's not something that you plant, set, and forget. You have to continually care for it because it's in the desert. You need the water, and the water is rare and sparse in a desert. So when Abraham plants this tree, he's saying, I'm going to make sure that my family and the generations of my family continue to take care of this tree because we want to make this a place of refuge, a place of shade for those that are hurting in the desert and need to find some rest. That's what we're doing with these services. This is what we're calling into at Prince of Peace. We've already planted a tree. The tree has been started, and now it's our opportunity to get engaged and to take care of this tree, to grow it and care for it, to see it grow, so that we can take care of those in our community and give them shade, give them refuge, cool them off from the desert they might be dealing with in their lives right now. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay, cool. We can carry along with this. I like where we're going with this journey then. You got the chart in front of you. We'll go ahead and get through this so the stream doesn't cut off before then. You'll notice on the left side of the chart, you've got different sections. There's one that says song selection, instrumentation, music leadership, etc. That's all giving the categories. And then to the right side, you'll see there are 3 services: Saturday, Sunday, early, 8:30, Sunday at 10:30. And we'll talk about the times here in a second too. So let's go through all of these. I'll explain a little bit more in detail of each section as we go through each service and kind of why we're doing what we're doing. And afterwards, I'll open up the floor. We can have questions, comments, and as my history teacher said back in middle school, any cries of anguish, we're welcome to share if we'd like. And so we'll open the floor then. So let's get started. We'll go through this quick because I'm hungry. I'm sure some of y'all are too. We'll get some lunch after this. Starting with Saturday at 5:30, the music is going to be contemporary. So we're looking at very similar to the music y'all have seen over the course of the summer. A lot of these songs we're pulling from a radio station called Air One. If you turn on your dial and go to 96.3, I believe is the station, that is a Christian station called Air One. Again, that station I think was 96.3 called Air One. We'll send out some links of this in the future. We've got an idea for the next week or two to send out some stuff via email so y'all are aware of like what songs we're doing and whatnot. We also want to create a playlist that kind of showcases some of those songs too. A lot of these songs come from the last decade or so they might be a little bit newer, but the goal behind this music is you're listening to it on the way to church, you're listening to it in church, you're listening to it after church. You're just surrounded by these same songs so that you're hearing them so much, you know them when you come there. You know them by heart. We want these songs to be living in your head, living in your hearts. So when you're having hard times at work, when you're having hard times with family, these songs pop up in your head. Even if it's just a morning coffee, a song pops up in your head. We're trying to just surround you in music with different ways. The instrumentation is band-driven, very similar to what we've seen this weekend so far. You got the guitar, the bass, the drums, acoustic, all that kind of stuff, things you would hear on these songs as well. The music leadership, now this is where we're very excited. It's volunteers in training. That's what I'm calling it. It's students and young adults. We want to create a funnel where we are bringing in the students from Wednesday night into our worship services. We want to give them teaching and training. We want to develop worship leaders. Like what Paul was saying, all these other churches, River Valley, Eagle Brook, Hosanna, they've got programs to develop their students, and we want to do that as well. I don't want to speak too much into what we've been hurt by in the last few years with our family ministry, but we want to rebuild that program. And a part of it is being able to offer opportunities to give them leadership, musicianship, spiritual growth, and all those opportunities through worship. So that 5:30 service, you're going to see more students involved, you're going to see young adults involved, and you're going to see some musicians that we're trying to teach and train to better them into, again, better musicianship, leadership, and spirituality. And you're going to notice this funnel, and I'll talk about it as we go through that. The liturgy is going to have a lot of scripture readings, prayers, music. Again, very similar to what we've already been doing, not too much of a change there. Communion we'll be doing weekly. That's at the 5:30 service again. Lighting is going to be kind of a darker room setting, so it's pretty bright right now in here. We want to kind of bring down the lights at the 5:30 service. The reason we're doing that is because if we have a guest, if we have somebody coming in wanting to check out our church, kind of curious what's going on, we don't want everybody staring at them being like, who's that? Who's that new person? You know, we don't want to feel that kind of judgment going on. We want them to feel like they can check it out without feeling like they're being watched. We also, if you ever come to our 10:30 service indoors or even outside, you might see some people worship in a different way. There's some people that may move when they worship, raise their hands. We don't have any interpretive dancers or anything right now. I'm not saying we're going evangelical, Pentecostal, any of that kind of sense. But I do want to give freedom to worship however you feel. And so for the 5:30 and the 10:30, we're going to have that darker room setting just to allow a little bit of freedom of worship and less sense of somebody's watching me, you know, kind of thing. And then with the volunteer needs, and this is going to be the most important part on all of these services, we are looking for greeters, ushers, scripture readers, prayer leaders, and welcome hosts. You'll notice on that volunteer form, it has definitions on either on the back of that page, or you might have a separate page. So you'll be able to read through kind of what a lot of those positions are. I think we have 10 volunteer positions there. And I'll come back to that after I've gone through all of this, just to explain the need and what the point of what we're trying to do with all that is. So let's move on to the Sunday service. Both the Sunday services, 8:30 and 10:30, are going to be streamed. We'll work on how to develop that. We want to make sure that we can get that out everywhere so all of us can see it no matter what kind of service we're taking part in. Currently, the Sunday time is set to 8:30, which you'll notice is 30 minutes earlier than we already have right now at 9 o'clock. The reason before we get too concerned about why we're doing that, and again, anything can change. This is still open to talk about and discuss. But the reason we've moved that back is to give us an hour, like Paul said, between the early service and the late service. We have an hour to be able to do men's breakfast. We can talk and eat. We also want to create Sunday schools and discussion groups between those services. It also allows us to change over any kind of set designs. We're going to have, just picture this with me real quick. We're going to have 3 leaders up front. Y'all have seen that before, kind of the worship leaders out front. We're going to have a band behind them, acoustic guitar, bass, drums, all that kind of stuff. Then imagine just an ensemble behind them, brass, maybe even cello, violin, strings. We could have a full orchestra. And then imagine a choir of 120 people back there. That sounds like a massive service that I would love to attend. And it's not just, as some people have been concerned about, an elderly service. This is an all ages service. It requires all of us to get involved to be able to do that. And that's the dream we're looking forward to. We're thinking 3, 5, 10 years from now, imagine Easter, Christmas every single week. Like that's what we want to see happen at some point. It's not going to happen in a year, and I don't want to give Adam any kind of heart palpitations talking about this right now. But that's the goal that we're going to slowly progress towards. So early on, we're going to see a lot of just the kind of contemporary elements that we're used to, but we're also going to bring in a few of those hymns to kind of blend both of that music. We'll talk about that here in a second. Traditional hymns, the few contemporary songs, exactly like I'm saying. Now that language we're working on. I know some of us hear tradition, we go, whoa, what does that mean? Some of us hear contemporary, we go like the last 10 years or the last 40 years contemporary. You know, it's hard to define that. So we're going to be very intentional in defining that in the coming weeks so that we're very aware of that. This does not mean that we're going full on traditional hymns every week, and it does not mean we're going on like how it's been this summer. There's going to be a blend. You're going to see at least 2 to 3 hymns every service, and you're going to see at least 2 modern songs that you may find from Air One, KTIS, something like this. It's going to feel familiar. So in both capacities, it brings you home and it brings you forward. You're kind of reaching back to history, and you're looking forward to the future. Instrumentation, like we described, you're going to see piano, organ, brass, strings, handbells, choir, flutes. They got mad at me because I didn't put them in the service charts, but they're included there too. So you have the flutes and some band elements, like I said, the acoustic guitar, bass, drums. We're just going to have that full blend. It's going to be amazing. Music leadership will be a worship leader, the choir. Again, we are leading the congregation. There are moments where Adam will turn and we're going to be leading the congregation together. It's not just the choir, it's all of us together. I always view the congregation as a choir in front of me as well. When we're playing up here, right? The choir isn't just back there. The choir's out here as well. We're all leading in a different capacity. And one of the coolest elements about having the choir in the loft is the fact that we're surrounded by music. We're surrounded in worship. It's not just singing up there, it's singing down here as well. So that's some of the leading elements. I'm starting to get on a tangent here. I'll try to narrow it down. Liturgy will be scripture readings, prayers, music, responsive readings. We may also be bringing in Apostles' Creed. We'll be bringing in some creative languages, some creative responsive readings written out of Prince of Peace from the pastors and from some of the writing teams. We want to make that more intentional. Again, that's at the 8:30 service. Communion, right now we have it monthly, like we're currently doing, but there is talk about what would it look like to do it every week. What would it look like to do every other week? You know, we're still playing with that, so if we have some discussion, thoughts, definitely want to hear more about that. The lighting, it says brighter room setting. This does not mean that it's going to be all the way on. It just means like how it already is. When we've already kind of come into the room and it's been enough to be able to see each other, but not enough to be too bright to where it's like you see everything. We want it to feel comfortable. We want it to feel like you're entering and it's going to remain that way so people can find their seats. We know some may have some vision problems. Some may have other kind of things. We want to be very cautious about that and aware of that. And so we're trying to illuminate the room a little bit more in order to have easier access. Plus, to be able to find our families. We want the 8:30 service to feel very family oriented. We're looking at each other and we're having fun. And this isn't, I know I said earlier, like if somebody's walking in one of those services and it's darker, we want them to not feel judged. We're not saying that y'all are judgmental at the 8:30 service. The opposite. We say that y'all smile so much that we got to make it bright so people can see your smiling faces, because I think that's very important. We want to be engaging that way. Volunteer needs, just like I said on the other services. Let's move on to the Sunday 10:30. Contemporary, just like the 5:30, it's actually going to be the same music between both services, just different leadership. The band-driven, guitar, bass, drums, keys. Music leadership, now this is interesting. It's what we're calling the leadership band. It's the same leaders week to week, and we're trying to be very intentional about this. It's probably going to be about a 3 to 6 month commitment for the band. We want them to be learning their songs by heart. We want them to be able to connect with the congregation. if people are coming here once a month, twice a month, they're never going to be able to meet people from the band because the band has been rotating so much. So we're trying to make it intentional to have the same people in the band as much as possible so that when people come here week to week, they get to know the band members. They get to know the people that are leading them. We think that's an intentional point of relationship that can change everything that's going on in the service. We want to get to know your heart because another big piece of that is we're going to be writing original music. If we know what's going on in your lives, we're not going to like give names or like be specific and all that stuff. But if we start kind of feeling what the fears or the concerns or the excitement, the joy, or some of the hard things going on in our lives, we can write songs that might affect y'all, that might kind of reach out to a place that you might need to hear. So that's kind of a piece of the goal, having the same leadership week to week in those services. The liturgy, just like the 5:30, you got scripture readings, prayers, music. We probably will be bringing in some more creative language behind that. Communion is monthly. Again, the same thing, just once a month, like we've always been doing. Lighting is still that darker setting, and the volunteer needs. This is what I really want to talk about right now. Throughout all three of these services, one of the biggest things that we are trying to achieve at Prince of Peace is to bring in more volunteer engagement. We believe that this is what's going to make this church incredible in our community. We have, like Paul said, the majority of the reach is the millennials right here in Burnsville. There's at least 30,000 plus people in a 10-minute drive right here. And that means there is a good portion of them that are looking for a church home right now. We're not trying to steal people from River Valley, Eagle Brook, Hosanna. Quite the opposite. I'd love to work with them in writing. I would love to work with them in finding what are some things that they're doing that has been good in their church leadership. I think we can learn things from other churches. But I think there's also an important community right here in Burnsville that we need to be reaching out to. And the best way to invite these people and to make them feel comfortable here is to find ways to volunteer and set up for success here at Prince of Peace. So all of that's going to look like how we're going to be creating greeters and reading scripture and all that stuff. We have phenomenal volunteer lists so far. I love seeing a lot of y'all every morning, kind of knowing what position you're doing and where you are. And we want to open that up for more, especially within the service itself. Now, this is something I think we used to do, but it's been a long time, and I want to bring this back. I want to have scripture readers. If you're interested in reading a scripture during a service, sign up for that. We're going to be starting that. If you're interested in leading a prayer during a service, would love to have you be part of that. If you're interested in being a welcome host, now this is interesting. This is where a lot of times I step up at the beginning and say, hey, I'm Russ Parrish, welcome, I'm glad you're here with us today. We'd love to have somebody else be able to step up and do that, because I'm sure y'all get tired of seeing my face up there all the time. Okay, a few of you don't, that's cool. But we'd love to bring in some other voices, other faces to kind of welcome other people, to see that you can get involved and find ways to do that. So that's gonna be a very, very big piece of everything going on. Another piece is the setup team. Because we're gonna be doing transitions between the traditional, and I keep saying traditional, forgive me for saying that word, we'll figure out what kind of word that'll become. Between the first service and the second service, we need a big crew to help transition that. There'll be a lot of new elements we're adding to the stage in both services, and we need a crew that can help move, set up, change these kind of things. So we're always looking for a lot of those. But you'll be able to see kind of what's going on with the volunteers, what the positions are called, what the definition of those are. And we want to really encourage y'all to sign up for these. And let me show you why. And then we'll be done, and I'll open up the floor to questions.